Imagine a world where everything is digital, connected to the internet, and can be turned off by the government or those working on the government's behalf. This is the world longed for by the proponents of social credit and the fundamental economic changes like CBDC. This isn't pure theory. As we can see in China, their government already uses its digital health codes, social credit limitations on travel, and digital payment systems to shut people out of activities they consider to be seditious or undesirable. This isn't even limited to China. Recently, in Colorado, the company Excel locked 22,000 people out of their thermostats during a heat wave. There is some dispute as to why this happened, but there is strong evidence to suggest this was because of a direct government request. This was defended as an energy-saving measure, but the reasoning for such action does not actually matter. What does matter is the fact that the government used a private company to take control of the heating systems inside people's personal homes. They justify this by saying they agreed to it when they signed up for their energy or heating plan. Through fine print and legalese, they gave their consent. But fine print cannot be used to take away basic rights, like control over your own home. There is fine print in everything, and society could not function if a little missed fine print could result in an unacceptable invasion of your personal privacy. That sort of language would be in everything you use, and the only way you could keep your rights is by abstaining from all services. Even then, they would find a way of saying you didn't opt out of this, that, or the other thing, and therefore gave your tacit consent to their terms and conditions. In this, we see a world where the only way to retain your rights is to both have endless time to read every service agreement and the money to survive without working or engaging with most technology or platforms. Basically, rights for the extremely rich and extremely paranoid, but nobody else. This is similar to the perverse way authoritarians speak about the social contract. The idea that because you are living in a society, you are giving consent for that society to take away your rights and force you to do certain things. That majority rule supersedes your rights. But this is not reality. You naturally have certain rights that cannot be taken away, no matter where you are born or what fine print is hidden in an iPhone service agreement. A service agreement is supposed to be a simple contract of use, letting you use a device or service for obvious things, but not for something illegal or destructive. What it isn't supposed to be is a vehicle through which your privacy and rights are stolen from you. The vast majority of people who had their thermostats locked had no idea they had agreed to something like that. Now, ignorance of a clause in a contract is generally not an excuse, just like ignorance of a law is not an excuse. But that only applies if the contract or law is within the realm of reason. If the purchase agreement for a car says you owe the manufacturer of that car $100,000 for tarnishing their reputation if you speed, well, that clause would be a massive overreach and possibly not enforceable. Likewise, if a town has a law on the books that says jaywalking carries a 9-year prison sentence, it should be unenforceable in a reasonable world. But that's the thing. We don't live in a reasonable world. When you can break up the blame for bad laws by spreading the cause over multiple bureaucracies, or better yet, through public-private agreement, bringing businesses in as a scapegoat, it gets even easier to muddy the waters and make nobody directly responsible for a violation of your rights. If the government directly spies on you or took control of your car or your AC system in your house, that would be a cause for immediate investigation and outrage. But if a company does it on the government's behalf under the excuse of, I don't know, a heat wave or a cold snap, that is something entirely different. You signed an agreement, so the company working on behalf of the government can do that. This bypasses the normal process for passing laws, which need to pass judicial review and eventually the Supreme Court. It gets around every check and balance that is intended to protect you from a runaway government. But what about protection from runaway business? Something authoritarians constantly use to justify increased government power. But as we've seen with multiple recent examples, all the government has to do when a company is the one to cross the line is ignore it. That's it. If they decline to prosecute or move to penalize or punish the company for infringing your rights, it basically legalizes the action. Now, keep in mind that recent events like the Twitter scandal and others do in fact show that government uses companies like puppets to violate your rights. This means that by simply cloaking themselves in corporate user agreements, the government can violate your rights with impunity. So once you have these mega corporations who are entangled with government and receive direct instructions and information requests from government and political leaders, what good are your rights? What good are the limitations of government when they can hand-wave away any restrictions on their power by saying, "That wasn't me, that was corporate America," when at least part of corporate America has become little more than arms of the federal government? Antitrust laws are supposed to protect people from these sort of abuses, but that relies on government actually enforcing laws that keep their puppets in check. Rather than direct action, all it would take for government to remove your rights such as speech, privacy, financial freedoms, and religion would be for those in power to respond with apathy when a company steps across the line. The company doesn't even need to be following orders. In fact, it is in the corrupt government's best interest for the puppet corporation to keep crossing the line for their own purposes, as it lends merit to the idea that they aren't a puppet. The whole system becomes an ecosystem of corruption and abuse aimed at removing your rights while not obviously violating the Constitution. Many people believe this is why government and corporations are pushing for everything to be online, electronic, and digital, because they can't deactivate an analog gas stove with the push of a button. But a high-tech electronic device that has constant internet connection can be easily accessed by the manufacturer and remotely terminated. It may not be intentional, but this ability to spy and remotely terminate devices is part of the dystopic mosaic of control. This is an emerging paradigm of surveillance and censorship on social media, the push for a CBDC, and the fawning adoration American authoritarians show towards the social credit system of the CCP. It is part of a persistent push to reframe our rights as allowances from the government rather than something inalienable. As AI data collection advances and agencies and companies become more integrated, it becomes easier to control and consolidate both information and control. And that is what authoritarians want. They want a world where anything they don't like can be turned off remotely, where you can be separated from your ability to travel, work, and even the ability to feed yourself can be taken away with the push of a button. Keep in mind, this doesn't need to happen tomorrow for it to be true. This is something that can evolve for decades, something that can be implemented very slowly over years. Each small violation of your privacy and rights seems like no big deal. This is the ultimate frog in the boiling pot, never noticing the temperature is going up until it is too late. I know this represents a bleak future, where you can truly own nothing and have no privacy. Companies lock out every substantial aspect of ownership behind fine print, dictating what you can and can't do with your property, where every word, thought, and action is known and analyzed, where everything you spend is tracked, and the value of every action is graded on a sliding scale of social justice. Cat was well known for locking people out of repairing their own tractors, and recently they lost a court battle, giving farmers the right to repair their own machines. They tried to stop this by saying that while the farmers owned the actual machines, Cat still owned the software, and you couldn't fix the machines without accessing the software. We need to support and celebrate decisions like this and keep pushing back on every tiny grab at our rights and privacy. Because just as our rights can be stolen by seemingly small, insignificant bites, they can be regained by unmovable resistance on things that may seem small and insignificant. Never give up your rights. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.